Hello and welcome back. In this section, we are going to learn a little bit about the male sexual response and the physiology of it in a lot more detail. So let's go ahead and get started. As noted before, the erection in the male is a parasympathetic response. So upon stimulation of mechanoreceptors in the glans penis itself, we basically turn off the sympathetic stimulation to arterioles in the genital area. And instead, we now are having parasympathetic stimulation. Remember that the genitalia is the only area of the body that does have parasympathetic innervation to the blood vessels. The rest of the body does not. And so with this increase in parasympathetic innervation going to the arterioles, what we have is we have an increased diameter, a dilation of them. And so we have more blood flow going into the penis, and that blood flow that's in the penis then is going to go into those sinusoidal spaces in the corpus spongiosa and the corpus spongiosum and the corpora cavernosum. So they are going to fill up with blood. And as these fill up with blood, they are going to enlarge and they are going to push on the low pressure veins next to them, shown here as the dorsal veins of the penis. And when those veins have this external pressure, that causes them to collapse. So now you have more blood flow coming into the penis, you have less blood flow leaving, and this is going to lead to the erection. And over a minute or so, the erection gets more and more prominent and firmer and larger. At the same time, we have parasympathetic supply increasing to some of the accessory organs and the male genitalia, those bulbourethral glands. And because of those, mucus will then be produced from them for lubrication. So let me show you how this works, because the way this works is to go back to our friend nitric oxide. We talked previously what an important vasodilator this was, and this is how it works in both the penis and the clitoris. So with sexual stimulation, we are going to have parasympathetic innervation, and what we're going to have is we are going to have the endothelial cells of the blood vessels in the penis and the clitoris release nitric oxide. Now, this release just lasts for a few seconds, but it's a chain of events that's going to occur. Once the nitric oxide is produced by the endothelial cell, it travels and has an effect in the smooth muscle cells in the wall of that blood vessel that's producing the nitric oxide. And what nitric oxide does is it causes the production of cyclic GMP. And cyclic GMP can get broken down and will get broken down. But while we have cyclic GMP, what it does is it's a secondary messenger. It's going to act on another protein kinase. And the net result of this is the concentration of calcium in the cytosol of that smooth muscle cell decreases. Why? Because some of it is being sent back into the endoplasmic reticulum. And it is this decrease in cytosolic calcium that is causing the smooth muscles to relax. And so when the smooth muscles of the blood vessels are relaxing, the diameter of that blood vessel is increasing, thereby increasing the blood flow, thereby leading to an erection. So that's the first part, the erection. But in order to get to the orgasm, finish the orgasm, we have the second part, which is actually two parts. It's emission and ejaculation, and both of these require sympathetic stimulation. So talking first about emission, with sympathetic stimulation, what we're going to have is we're going to have closure of that internal urethral sphincter just below the bladder so that nothing reflexes back into the urinary bladder. We also are going to have the smooth muscles surrounding the seminal vesicle, and in the prostate gland, it's going to contract. And so now we will be releasing the seminal fluid and the prostatic fluid, and both fluids from both of those organs will then be in the prostatic urethra. And now, in addition to that, we are going to have the smooth muscle in the vas deferens, both internally as well as the part of the vas deferens that's in the spermatic cord, undergo peristalsis. And what happens here is this peristalsis is so intense that it actually is kind of like sucking the sperm, which are still in the epididymis. So that's how the sperm get out of the epididymis to show up in the urethra. And this peristalsis will continue to move the sperm along the entire length of the vas deferens, and it continues along the urethra until the sperm and the seminal fluid are ejaculated. So this picture on the right is to show you that we have different levels of the spinal cord being involved. For the erection, that is parasympathetic. So we are involving the sacral area of the spinal nerves. Whereas the parasympathetic stimulation for emission ejaculation comes from the thoracic and lumbar areas, which is where we have our sympathetic nerves exiting the spinal cord. So at the time of ejaculation, the average speed is faster than you drive through your neighborhood, okay? So pay attention to where that's going. So here's the thing, if that ejaculate goes into somebody's eye and you have to go to the emergency room, like, you gotta explain that to your parents, okay? That's on you. All right, now in contrast to humans, let's talk about the honeybee for 30 seconds. When male honeybees ejaculate, because they have sex in midair, they ejaculate and it kills them. They actually die. So they live to have one good sexual experience, and after that, I won't say it's all downhill after that, because there is nothing to go downhill. They're just dead. All right, getting back to humans. Let's talk for a moment about that erectile dysfunction. I think I mentioned some of this before. And let's talk about how those pills, that Viagra and the Cialis, actually work. So let's talk for a moment about erectile dysfunction in young men. Smoking, big cause. Number one cause in the young people is smoking. Obesity, any kind of psychological disturbance, whether it's depression, anxiety, or stress, as well, you might expect liquor and drugs, and high blood pressure, which is becoming quite significant for the young men in the United States. Now, the treatment for erectile dysfunction is either a penis implant or a penis pump, which we're not talking about, but medication. So pretty much everybody has heard about Viagra and Cialis. So let me explain to you how that works. It works by inhibiting an enzyme, see the ACE, an enzyme called phosphodiesterase 5. And you're going, wait a minute, Dr. Powell, you never told us about that. So I'm telling you about that now. If you recall, nitric oxide, when it was produced in the endothelial cell, traveled to the smooth muscle cells, where it took GTP and made cyclic GMP, and then cyclic GMP went ahead and decreased the cytosolic calcium. Okay. But if you recall, I said that this effect only lasts for a couple of seconds. Everything is broken down. And what it is broken down by is this enzyme phosphodiesterase 5, which breaks down the cyclic GMP to GMP. And GMP does not have this effect. So what Viagra and Cialis do is they block phosphodiesterase 5 so that the cyclic GMP cannot be broken down. So we stay with elevated levels of cyclic GMP, thereby having elevated and prolonged lowering of calcium levels in the smooth muscle cells, thereby giving you increased blood flow for much prolonged periods of time, half an hour to an hour to 2 hours. So this is why the erection can last quite a bit longer than it would under normal physiological conditions. So Here is an example of what's happening to a blood vessel and artery in the penis. And in the presence of phosphodiesterase 5 in a normal male, what happens after you lose that parasympathetic innervation? You're all sympathetic, the blood vessels get narrower, blood flow decreases, the erection goes away. But in the presence of either of these drugs, this is Viagra and that one's Cialis, both of those are phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitors, and that prevents the narrowing. So the narrow blood vessel becomes dilated. You have increased blood flow, prolonged erection. So you have to realize that this nitric oxide is not only working in the penis, it has effects throughout your body. So go ahead, stop it at this point and look at all the effects and realize this is not a drug just to be taken for fun if you don't need it, because it can kill you. All right. I didn't mean to talk about death so much when talking about sex, but it just kind of showed that. So with that, we are done talking about the male orgasm, and I will see you for our next lecture. Thank you.